We are recording.
Good morning and welcome to the September 16th, 2021 Parks and Recreation Commission Luther Burbank Docks Subcommittee video meeting. My name is Peter Struck and I am the subcommittee chair. In accordance with Proclamation 20-28.10 and the Governor's Extended Safe Start Order, this morning's Park and Rec Subcommittee meeting is using video conferencing technology provided by Zoom. The Zoom video of this meeting is being recorded and will broadcast live via Zoom and will be uploaded to the city's YouTube channel later this evening or later this morning. City staff and Paul West and consultants Andy Bennett and Anna Spooner are participating in this morning's meeting remotely. Other public audience members are listening to the meeting by telephone or via the internet. Welcome to all and thank you for joining us today. Commissioners, please, and committee members, please turn on your microphones. Will the city staff please call the roll?
Chair Struck.
Present.
Commissioner Westberg.
Present.
Lynn Gualtieri.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. Participants, before we start the business of this meeting, I want to suggest a few rules to help the meeting to run smoothly. We are going to be less formal than in full commission meetings. Please step in to speak when you sense that the previous speaker has finished. I ask that everyone be observant and allow commissioners and committee members equal access to speak. You still may use the raise hand feature if you want to step into the conversation. Please mute your microphone if you do not anticipate speaking in the current discussion. Additionally, prior to speaking, please state your name for those listening in on the meeting. This morning's agenda will not include public appearances. However, individuals wishing to make comments on the subcommittee's business today can use the comment feature on the Let's Talk page, project page, or email Paul West, the project manager. The next regular meeting of the Park and Rec's full commission is on October 7th, 2021, where there will be an opportunity to address comments to the full commission during public appearances via Zoom. Now, with respect to the agenda today, our regular business is comprised of 4 topics. First, there will be a presentation on Luther Burbank Shoreline components and discussion to follow. Then a presentation on the Luther Burbank Plaza components and a discussion to follow. Permitting issues, and finally next steps and meeting wrap up. So with that agenda before us, Paul, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you kind of guide us through.
All right, thank you. So this morning, the first topic is shoreline access, which is basically consists of the North Beach area. And Anna, do you want to share your screen, or I also have the PDF of the plan set open to the North Beach area. I can either share that or it's up to you.
I can share my screen. Let me just get right to the right page first, and then I will share it. So let me actually put it on the screen so I can still look at you guys while I'm sharing. Okay. 1 second. Okay, do you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, great. So I will zoom into the north piece to talk about the north access. So the concept here is to expand this beach area. This red line you see here, that's the current upland extent of the gravel beach. So the current gravel beach is waterward of this red line, and it's pretty narrow, as you know. So the design is looking to expand that beach upland. So it cuts into the existing bank in this location and expands the beach. There's then a pathway connection. It's a crushed gravel ADA accessible pathway. Its grade is less than 5%. And it connects that beach to the plaza. It also then has a connection here to the existing ADA beach that then travels north.
Anna, could you zoom in just a little more on that so we can?
Sure. Is that better?
Yeah, that's great.
So it provides a wider pathway to what exists now, the kind of desire path that's out there now. It's a wider, more formal pathway. It's 5 feet wide, crushed gravel surfacing, and it ends at the point here, which is a concrete cap on a sheet pile. So it'll look like a concrete stair with a small step then down to the beach in that location. So that's the North Shoreline access improvements.
Can you talk about the tree removals that entails?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can see we've indicated in red, there's an existing tree here. This is a 24-inch maple. And there are 2 existing trees in this location, cottonwoods, an 8-inch and a larger 24-inch cottonwood. There's also an existing tree in this location that's a 24-inch cottonwood, I believe, as well. Mm-hmm. Those 4 trees will need to be removed to support the beach grading and pathway alignment. And then we are proposing trees in this location to replace that loss of existing tree. We're also proposing trees on the south end. These symbols here are new deciduous and coniferous native trees.
Maybe you could talk about what is it? There's an edge, the edge to the beach, the gravel beach area. It looks like is that a retaining wall, rockery?
Yeah, so the edge to build up the grade in order for this pathway to meet the plaza here, we're building up the grade a bit. This is all upland of the ordinary high lake water mark. But this hatch here locates a low rockery, so no more than 2 feet tall or so. In some areas lower than that. And it would be a rockery here. And then you can see the ordinary high watermark is this line type that continues then and ties in to the plaza in this location. In front of the rockery, we'd place some beach gravel and habitat gravel, and then reinstall the habitat logs and some of the boulders that are currently out there. And then that rock edge continues along the beach here in order for the grades to work. So in front of that rock edge is a flat beach that matches the grade of the existing beach, which is about an 8-to-1 grade. And then behind that rockery is the landscaped area that is about a 3-to-1 grade, a little bit steeper to match up to that existing trail. And that would be revegetated with native shoreline vegetation.
So the only place we'd have that sheet pile would be where there'd be a little bit of a step down from the ADA path onto the gravel beach.
Exactly. And the reason why we're doing that, when we get into the design details of this rockery, because it's so close to the shoreline, we want to design for potential scour. So the rockery toe and the sheet pile will provide a depth to kind of consider future scour. So to reduce any need or reduce the future need for beach nourishment, knowing that beaches move and there are dynamic elements to a park.
Yeah, I think that covers pretty much all the detail there. Is there anything that the commissioners or the committee members would like to ask? Go ahead.
I think Lynn has a comment or question.
Yeah, so was the actual beach going to be ADA accessible? And if so, where exactly? How would you get, if you're in a wheelchair, how would you get from that ADA accessible path, like actually onto the beach? Or was that not a goal? I can't remember.
Well, the beach surface is not an ADA accessible surfacing. So we're providing an ADA access point to have the same experience, a similar experience, that viewing and being able to sit adjacent to the beach. But to get actually down to the beach, in terms of the surfacing in a wheelchair, for example, it's not an ADA accessible beach. Or beach, I mean, gravel and sand and natural beach materials are not ADA accessible. So the idea and the intent of the design was to get folks with potential access limitations as close as we possibly can to that beach to have that similar experience, knowing that once they're on the beach, that's not technically an ADA accessible surfacing.
Also,
Anna, this is Peter. Kind of to follow up on the comment of Lynn's and so forth. In your experience with kind of other projects and so forth like this with beaches, has there been any desire to actually create true beach access for ADA, or is it it's just too big of a lift, if you will?
I think that to answer that question, ADA access on the actual beach surface is tricky because you would have to add like mats or some sort of surfacing that is still ADA accessible and stiff and rigid enough to allow for ADA access. I think what I've worked on a lot of beaches and public parks, and really what we try to do is create an adjacent experience that is wide enough and large enough to kind of get that similar experience of being on the beach, and provides a lot of horizontal spatial or spatial location to potentially, if you or with others, that you can move around and experience that beach in a different way. But the actual beach itself is tricky to make an accessible surface.
Okay,
if you want a beach.
thank you for that additional information and background. I think that's helpful for the community.
This is Rory Westberg. I just have a couple of questions. One, we did discuss conceptually allowing for beach access by putting down mats over the cobble, which could be removed during the low water period. So that one of the ideas was to try to be able to get people out there, but not do out to the beach, but not do anything structural or permanent that would allow for that. So I don't know if that would be possible, given that there's a step down there, but my impression is that the step is with the concrete cap there is not that high above the gravel. Is that the case?
Yes, that is the case. The step is almost flush.
Yeah.
And we can design it, as flush as possible, but there is a caveat that beaches do move.
Right.
And are dynamic. So that step, it could change over time.
And I'm a little confused from the drawing and where you're showing the red line currently as the upper limit for the gravel beach. Does the beach actually extend beyond the red line, but it's just not shown in this drawing?
You extend beyond the red line to the north?
To the west, into the water.
Oh, correct. So yeah, so this is the upper limit of the gravel. So the gravel extends, it depends on the time of year, but the gravel extends into the water to a certain distance. So in the summer, this is the ordinary high. So this is about the width of the beach in the summer. And
yeah,
then
so in fact, there would be gravel there too from the ordinary high up to the wall.
Correct. So the actual beach experience is quite a bit larger. We're just showing the expanded beach area.
Okay.
Good
Gotcha.
comment. Yeah.
I thought that was the case, but I just wanted to confirm that. And then two other quick comments. One is, it looks like you're adding enough or the same number of trees to replace the ones that would have to be removed. So there's no net loss of trees in this plan. Is that correct?
Correct. And these are the larger tree symbols are grand fir, big leaf maple, and cedar. The smaller symbols are vine maple, and then some larger shrubs. So we are looking to, depending on how you classify what's a tree, if a vine maple is a tree or a shrub, but we are looking to offset the loss of the trees and mitigate that within the project area.
And in addition, I note that we're replacing with native vegetation, at least 3 trees which aren't native. The cottonwoods aren't native, and they're there as a, I don't know when they were planted, Paul, but so that's an advantage in a way. We're replacing non-native trees with native trees and native vegetation in that site. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think cottonwoods are native, but I'm guessing that these are volunteers. I don't think they were probably, I don't know, that would be a question to you, Paul.
Yeah, they're
But I do think it's an enhancement to have native conifers
Yeah.
versus cottonwood.
the cottonwoods are actually Lombardy poplars, so they.
Oh, they're Lombardi poplars.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys are right.
Right.
Sorry, I thought they were
They're not a black cottonwood
net.
or something like
Okay.
that.
got it.
Um,
Yeah, so that is something to highlight. Yes.
And then just a final sort of comment and question. When we were doing the preliminary or the concept plan, that we had just shown a trail coming out from the Plaza area onto the beach. I like the configuration that you've come up with, this sort of H pattern where there's actually a connector to the existing ADA gravel path. So there's a way to get on and off of that path directly to the beach. And does anything have to be done to the existing asphalt trail into the plaza in order to comply with ADA rules, or are the connectors here designed to accomplish that, particularly the connection from the existing gravel trail to the asphalt?
This area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this existing asphalt driveway is very steep.
Right.
So really the ADA access route is intended to be, currently it goes here and then it hits this and ends, and that's no longer ADA accessible. So our intent here is to create a more code compliant ADA access route all the way along the plaza.
I see.
So we're maintaining this gravel connection because I think people will still potentially go that way. But it's not ADA accessible. So
Okay.
conceivably we could get rid of it, but I think people would still potentially cut through there. And if we put plants, they might trample them. So
Yeah, I agree.
yeah, so we're maintaining that. But yeah, this piece of the trail, well, it's flat, it hits the asphalt, and that is no longer an accessible route.
Okay, so the accessible route is, that explains the connector between
Exactly.
the two trails then.
Yeah, it was some tricky grading to figure that out, but it works out really well.
Let's see, I had another question that just escaped me. I can't remember what I was going to ask, so go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Lynn?
Oh,
Lynn, do you have a question?
yeah, just until Rory remembers what he wanted to ask. But again, just to follow up on Rory's comment about the mats that we had talked about and the ADA accessibility to boating, wasn't that something we talked about, or is that happening somewhere else?
Yeah, I remember that too, and was going to kind of ask
Yeah.
all if in our discussions in the kind of the concept design, I remember talking about that, and what was our decision? We just said we were going to review it further or put it to bed. I'm not really, we should probably.
No, I believe it's in the concept design that there are mats that we can put down temporarily.
Okay.
Provide access to the water. I think the point that Anna's making is that they're not shown as constructed improvements because they're temporary. They'll be operational. They're not capital. So, and even if the mat is a wheelchair accessible surface, the grade down to the water won't be a so-called ADA grade. It'll be too steep. So it'll still, I mean, somebody in a wheelchair who's capable of going down that steeper grade will be able to use it. And so it will provide boating access to kayaks, but that has to be programmatically done, not
Okay.
as a constructed element.
Thanks for that distinction between kind of capital and programmatic or operational things. So
Yeah,
good.
I mean, it might still be good to in further design to kind of figure out what the interface between the sill and the mats are. You know, but I think what's going to happen is, you know, at the beginning, you know, when we know we have a program that needs that kind of access, our crew will get out there and move the gravel around to provide the grade for the mats, and then lay the mats out. And then that'll last for as long as the program runs, and then we'll take it up and do it again when we need it again. It'll be that kind of operational system.
Okay, thank you.
I remembered what my question was going to be. And I'm sure the answer is yes, but so let's assume somebody takes the ADA route and is in a wheelchair and wheels out to the point where the concrete cap is. Is that trail wide enough then to turn around a wheelchair and be able to go back out moving forward?
Right, it's 5 feet wide.
Oh, okay. I
So
couldn't
it's
quite
not-
tell from the drawing.
Yeah, it's not it's not 3 or 4 feet, which still potentially could meet code. So the idea is that, yes, you could turn around there.
Any further questions for Anna on the North Beach area and the pathway and so forth? Okay, hearing none. Paul, what's the next step?
Yeah, so Anna, why don't we move south to the plaza? And there's a lot more stuff here, so this is the majority of the agenda, is to go through this. So
That sounds good. Do you want me to also talk about the pathway connection here, or is that a separate item?
to the outdoor classroom.
Yeah, is that all
Yeah,
together? Okay,
We'll be, yeah, and actually we need to save a little time to look at the outdoor classroom elements too, which
very good,
or Andy could go over.
very good.
Just
Okay.
this is Peter again. Just Paul, what slide number is this? Because I can put it on my big screen here. It'll be easier for me to see.
Sorry, it's sheet G 021,
Okay.
page 5 in the, I think it's page 5 or page 4. It's one of the first sheets.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Yeah, it helps to really zoom in because they're small.
Yeah.
There.
Okay.
I think Lynn, I mean, Anna, I think we need to really budget most of the time to look at the stairs and the bollards. That's going to, I think, be the most discussion. But why don't you do a walkthrough of
Okay.
kind of where we're at 30%.
Very good. So you can see the plaza here. One big move is to resurface the existing plaza. So in this location, it would be resurfaced with poured in place concrete. And then along the shoreline, this tight grid is pervious pavers to infiltrate stormwater. The plaza, that resurfacing requires the removal of the 3 existing trees, smaller or okay sized deciduous trees that are not in the best health. We'll replace those with 1 new tree, a larger kind of semi-coniferous tree that's planted within a silva-cell system, which is a kind of a stormwater infiltration that will continue beneath the pathway, the paving as well. So to really provide a lot of root area for that tree to survive in and do well in. The plaza then includes some new site furnishings, 2 benches and a picnic table. And the existing kiosk that's kind of in this location will be removed. And the intent is to, well, potentially save that kiosk, or more likely, I think would be more preferred to do a new kiosk in this location. So kind of declutter the large plaza and get things out of it. In addition to that kiosk, there'd be other signage. There's an existing sign in this location that would be mounted onto the wall. So again, to try to get clutter out of the plaza. And then a new signage for no swimming on either side of the new stair feature. So the new stair feature is shown here. It's a graded FRP fiberglass graded stair adjacent to the Hanson bollards here that are steps down towards the water surface. So in the summer, when the tide is, or not tide, when the water is high, the water line would be about at the lower tread here. And then in the winter, when the lake level is lower, it would be about 1.5 feet, 2 feet below. So folks would be able to dangle their feet and sit on the stairs. The bollards would be retained and protected. We would kind of break the chain in 5 locations. One here, 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 and here. So the idea there is that the hands always hold at least one chain. And the openings are about 5 feet wide, and there are 5. The other kind of key element to talk about is this pathway connection. So the rooftop classroom is here, and then there is a ramp coming down. This is a structural ramp coming down and hitting the existing grade at this location. And then we have a pretty tight ramp down this existing hillside to the plaza. And that would be an on-grade ramp. So it would be concrete on-grade ramp that that meets ADA code, and it's between about 5% and up to about 8% to meet code. And there's also a stair connection here, which is a granite stair to connect back to that existing pathway that currently is in this location. So to maintain that connection to the upland. We've also talked about quickly, and Paul, let me know how much you want me to get into this, but we've talked about another potential alignment for this trail to connect from the outdoor classroom down this slope and then across the existing driveway to the South Shoreline Trail, which is the project, a separate project that will provide an ADA connection from the plaza south along the park. That alignment, I have a quick sketch of what that alignment would look like. But essentially it would require us to still have a pretty switchback, pretty circuitous route here to get that length in order to keep the trail really gentle, and then would require regrading and resurfacing a portion of this gravel trail in order to maintain the ADA accessible code to then connect into this trail, and then would also require a leg kind of along here to do another switchback. So it's a longer trail, but it's another option that I can show if we want to see that. And then, in terms of trees, you can see 2 trees are going to be removed as part of this design, in addition to the 3 in the plaza. The existing madrone, we're looking at, the arborist is looking at its viability. We potentially could protect it as part of this plan, but it's not in the best shape. So there might be some reason to remove it just for safety. And then we're proposing a number of trees. This area would be mostly native vegetation, trees and small trees and shrubs.
Okay, questions, comments?
This is Rory Westberg. A couple of comments. One, it's the thing that caught my eye when I looked at this was the trail, the circuitous trail, the curving trail that we would need to put in order to meet ADA grading requirements. The portion that's shown kind of twisting up to the hillside, as you mentioned, would be on grade and concrete. And then the portion in white, is that where you elevated on pylons?
Correct.
Above grade in order to climb up to the elevation of the rooftop?
Yes.
Yep.
And And so there is a lot of vegetation in there where the curving trail would have to go up that would need to be removed. But I don't recall that there were big trees in there. So again, are we replacing, is the replacement, the tree replacements 1-for-1 as far as the trees that we're taking out? I guess we're taking out potentially, you include the lower plaza, four trees and adding in 3, is that right?
I think it's 5 trees will be removed. And then
Right.
currently we show,
Oh, 5, okay.
we show, well, we show 3 larger trees and then also an additional 11 smaller trees.
Yeah, the vine maple and other native plantings of that nature.
Hmm.
Okay,
And there is some flexibility in making sure that we, meet that mitigation requirement.
okay.
Flexibility in the fact that there are some spaces where we could fit more trees if we need to.
And then 2 other quick questions. One is, you mentioned that the the surface, the small tiled area, or what looked like small tiles in the drawing,
Yes.
would be pervious pavers.
Correct.
Is that, Paul, is that considered impervious surface now? You know?
Yes, it is.
So we would in effect be adding several hundred square feet of pervious surface with this plan.
That's correct.
And so that's a big plus, I think. And then with regard to the steps, that's a new, would that be viewed for permitting purposes as a new over water requirement, since the dock square footage and the existing square footage was pretty much, I think they were within 5 square feet or something like that of being the same. So we're in effect adding covered surface over the water with these steps.
Correct.
Is that correct?
I think we can, the original calculations were based on some gross areas. Actually, our new overwater coverage is a little bit less than we had done when we were working in PDFs instead of actual AutoCAD. So we have a little bit less overwater coverage on the docks now. So with the stairs, we're close to a wash. And
Okay,
if that's an issue, there's a couple places where we could shorten a dock by 2 feet and really not affect the function of the dock very much to make sure that we have enough, that the net new add with the stairs is still within the existing coverage. The docks are in deeper water. This is in really shallow water. So the habitat benefit of the coverage is a little bit different because of that. But this is also on a bulkhead, which is not a great shoreline feature. So there's a lot of factors going in, but it looks like we can get to the point where with the stairs, we're still at no net additional overwater if we make the docks just a little bit smaller.
okay. Yeah, I was just wondering, I mean, I don't have a problem with it, but from a permit, and we're going to talk about permitting,
Yeah.
but from a permitting standpoint, whether that would emerge as an issue. And then the bottom of those steps would be sitting on supports that were anchored in to the bottom of the lake, it looked like.
Yeah, there'll be what are called pin piles, which are,
Pile.
like that. They're easier to install. They don't have the installation process doesn't have as much impact as driving a big pile. But we need to do something because the span is too long and that the bulkhead, it can support a vertical load on top of it, but it can't support a cantilever load. It
Right.
just doesn't have the structural capacity. So we're going to need a couple of pin piles along that outer edge.
Okay.
Anna, can you zoom to sheet O20, S020? You can just take.
I don't think I have, Andy, could you share your screen?
Yeah.
I don't have the latest version of
Yeah,
that sheet.
I've got the full set up here. Let me
And I think it's just important to see the detail of this. Just
Yeah.
so you get a good feeling.
Yep. There we go. Oh, why is it?
There it is.
So this is the elevation. And so you can see we've got a couple of these pin piles holding up the edge. And in section, this is what it would look like. Turn that off. So we've got some anchors into the wall to support a vertical load. And then we've got these 6-inch piles at the edge. And then it's some wide treads. It's an open steel grating. So we got that 60% open area to let light through. And then it's just a steel frame holding it up. So it's, in terms of what you see, it's going to look pretty light.
And this is Rory Westberg again. One quick follow-up question. Do you remember what the water depth is off the bottom step?
At
'Cause it is-
high, I think it's like at low water, it's
I believe there's a
It's like-
section, one of the grading sections show it. If you want to look at that section, it shows the existing grade in one of the locations. So if you zoom into section C there, you can get a little bit of an idea.
yeah, there we go.
So the existing grade there is a little bit above 15. And you can see the ordinary low water and high water. So at high water, you're in about, just under 4 feet of water.
Right now, it's
Okay,
it's
and
about waist
just-
high.
and about 2 feet at low.
Yeah.
Or a little less.
Yeah.
Because that was
1.5 at
one of
low.
one of the things I remember we kicked around was whether we would need protection actually down on the lower step because of the water depth there and, kids going down and falling in the lake or whatever. So it's, that's why I was curious as to what kind of depths we were looking at.
Yeah, we've heard some comments about people getting under the steps. So if it was at high water, for example, and getting under the steps. And so I think it's a good consideration to think about and how to maintain a safe experience for folks.
Yeah, and the challenge we've got if we were to do any sort of barrier under the steps, like here, is that that would be a safety feature, but it's going to have a negative habitat, or it's going to negatively affect the ecologic function here, and so it's going to make it harder to get the permit. So those are some of the things that we talked about in terms of what the challenges are with this. It's a new feature, and it's not necessarily a new use, but it does present some challenges in terms of that access and safety and habitat function.
So this is Peter Strug, just on the steps themselves. So I'm thinking kind of from a user experience. So I walk down and I want to just sit on that top step and gaze at the water, boats, whatever. So the kind of the width or the depth of the step is how much?
It's an 18-inch tread.
Okay, so 1.5 feet. All right. And then the so the surface is kind of like a plastic grating, is that correct?
In fact, it's similar to what you would see maybe on a pier or gangway. So the square or rectangle grating, and it's fiber reinforced, so it is plastic composite type product. Have some grit to it.
So I'm trying to, I guess, not visualize, but kind of from a feeling. So if I want to sit, so I've got them kind of sitting on a grate.
Yeah.
And it's quote unquote kind of a hard plastic. Yeah, I'm trying to, it'd be like sitting kind of like on a hard plastic stool, I guess. Is that I'm just trying to.
No, it's a grading. It's got to be 60% open to allow light transmission for permitting. And
Okay.
so it's a bunch of, slats that are about that wide, and they're about that far apart. And so
Okay.
it's
Right. Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. So it's the slat. Okay.
and
Peter,
if
it would be similar to the existing floating dock down there.
yeah,
And that,
Oh, okay.
and
Okay.
that certainly doesn't deter, based on my observation, that certainly doesn't deter any sunbathers or other people from spreading out a towel or whatever and laying down on that dock on the existing one. So.
Okay. That's kind of, thank you, Roy. That's exactly what I was kind of getting at. So thank you. Any other questions or comments on this kind of specific of Lynn?
Yeah, if you could like go back to the bigger picture one.
Yeah. I've got some.
I have some comments and about that. Just while you're getting back to it. Well, I guess I would say I like the bollard solution with breaking the chain every 5 or however you did it, or for 5 feet. I know we talked a lot about that and how, how to deal with that. And I think that would discourage people from like carrying their kayaks or paddle boards through this plaza area and like trying to launch them there on the steps. Like hopefully that's not going to happen, or that's not going to be an issue. So I like that. A few really small comments. That sign over by the picnic table, or how high, you said something about the sign on the wall, or like, yeah, down over by that picnic.
Yeah.
What exactly was that sign, and how high is the railing, or where's the sign mounted? Do we know those details?
So the existing wall is about, I think it's about 42 inches tall. So it's kind of guardrail height. And the sign right now it's a sign, I believe it's about the lake habitat. Is that correct, Paul? Is it
It's
an
a,
interpretive sign, or is it a
park's
safety
the park
sign?
map there.
map of
Oh,
the
it's the
park.
park
Yeah.
map. That's what it is.
Okay.
So the actual theme of the sign, if between the kiosk and this sign, we can figure that out. But essentially, it's 36-inch wide by about 24-inch deep sign that's mounted on a freestanding metal support. So we would take that sign and design. Yeah, you can see it here in this
right.
picture, and design a mount, a steel mount on the actual wall. So it's just cleaner and simpler, and getting and clearing out that plaza as much as we can.
Yeah, I remember we talked about that. It would be kind of low to read it, but whatever. Anyway, but thanks for showing that picture.
We could also design the mount to a specific height and consider there's ADA guidelines for signage height, and so we would want to consider that in detailing that out.
Okay. And then I had 2 more questions. One was about the alternate trail. Why were we considering an alternate trail, or like pros and cons of both?
Do you want to show the alternate, Anna? I can stop and you can maybe pull that up.
Sure.
This is Peter. Maybe before we jump to the alternate trail one, if I've got a couple more questions on this slide. I don't know, Lynn, do you have any more on this one?
Yeah, I just have one more. So it was about the pervious pavers. And can you, Anna, say again about I would assume it's just sort of rainwater, lake water, on that surface going back into the lake. But what if, I don't know, they were washing boats or something, or there was some potential like point source of pollution directly into the lake? Like what happens when the water goes under those pavers, and how is that connected to the lake? Is it draining right into the lake?
Right. So Andy, you might want to help me on this response as well, since you're leading up some of the stormwater design. But currently, there's no pollution generating surfaces that are leading down to this system. But the pervious paving, the layers beneath, will be designed with sand and gravels to infiltrate and capture contamination or any pollutants prior to discharge. But the actual discharge, Andy, I'm kind of looking to you a little bit on that route since it's under development.
Yeah, it's going to be collected. What we would like to do is we would like to have what's called a silva cell, which is an area under the paving that allows for tree roots to expand. And so you don't just have a small area that your tree roots are in. You may only see a little bit, but there's actually a bigger area for the tree roots to go. And that area also, as Anna mentioned, provides a filtering element for stormwater that comes into the cell. It passes through the cell, then it's collected essentially on the opposite side, and then it would go into one of the outfalls. There's a couple of outfalls along the bulkhead here. As we're looking into that, when we look at if we go to the grading sections, you see that at high water, the water level is not very far below the top surface of that paving, and silva cells have a minimum depth that they require to function properly. And we're kind of pushing that limit pretty hard in the wintertime when the water is high. So whether or not we can make the silva cells work is something that's going to require a little bit of creativity. But even if they don't work, the water here will pass through some filtering layers and be collected, and then it will come out through one of the outfalls, probably one of the outfalls that's here underneath the stairs, is kind of is where that will likely go. So it will be treated a little. It will be treated through the filtering elements, and then it'll go into the lake.
Okay, and then what's the maintenance on that? Is there maintenance involved in that?
Not really.
Okay,
And we did the same kind of thing under the holding lanes at the new ferry terminal at Mukilteo. And those, they never want to dig up the holding lanes to do maintenance on the substrate. So that's one of the benefits of using that approach, is you don't have to do anything to it, especially here where there's no pollution generating surface, as Anna mentioned.
right.
And there's no intention to provide a hose spigot or anything that would encourage anyone to do any boat washing here. And I think even if you had a food cart down here, you would want to have some BMPs in terms of a catchment underneath the cart, to best management practice, to provide a containment under the cart in case they had a grease spill or something like that, to keep that out, particularly if they had a little generator that maybe you have to put gas in it. So you don't have some best management practices to keep any of that from getting into the pavement. So again, those are operational things. From a capital perspective, you should never have to dig this up and do any maintenance to it.
Great, thank you.
So this is Peter. I'll take a couple turns here. So first, I like the idea of the kind of the decluttering that Anna mentioned and so forth. And I really like the using the pervious pavers, as we just discussed. Question regarding kind of the rest of the plaza area and so forth, is any or all of that area, would that be available, I guess, to be used using pervious pavers as opposed to impervious concrete or whatever is being considered?
Oh,
Yeah, I think it's an option. Another option, depending on what you want to do, is to use a permeable concrete. Those exist and can be used somewhere. I don't know aesthetically, or I don't know, Anna, if you have any thoughts on the functions and other impacts of that in terms of programming.
right.
But from the civil engineering perspective, a permeable concrete works. So
Right. permeable concrete is an option. Aesthetically, it's not great looking, which is kind of one of the reasons why we went with the paver. The paver will look a lot nicer, but it is an option. I think we're going above and beyond any stormwater requirements on this site as it is. We can keep doing that. I mean, why not? It's a great thing to do. I do think there is a little bit more maintenance with pavers, with unit pavers versus concrete paving. So there's some considerations with maintenance over time. The concrete paving is a little bit more bulletproof and easier to, if you want to go down and pressure wash or things like that. So I think it's a balance, but we designed it the way you see it here, with aesthetics certainly as a driver, and kind of defining more of the shoreline edge versus as you're moving to more of the upland and surrounding the building edge, were the big drivers as to why we landed where we landed.
Thanks. I would just to follow up, just add that I think in the community there is, at least among many, can't say all, a desire to try to increase pervious surface wherever possible. And I think if I heard correctly, it is possible, but again, there's a multiple of issues here, and maintenance cost, aesthetics, the differentiation and so forth. So I would just urge that, keep it under consideration, and we'll see where it goes. I don't know if Roy or Lynn have strong feelings one way or the other, but that's mine.
Yeah, this is Rory. I think we need to look for opportunities where we can, and I'm particularly pleased to see that the portion of where the pavers are will be impervious. Is in the surface drainage is toward the lake, is it not?
On the plaza itself,
Yes.
but it is. It'll be designed to, like Anna said, to infiltrate, so it won't drain. It won't be sheet flow over the edge into the lake. It'll sink into the concrete and be treated.
But I was thinking if there's sheet flow from the area that's currently designated for concrete,
right,
impervious concrete, it would flow toward the pavers. Would it not?
yes.
So then it would presumably, unless there was a deluge, I guess, or something, it would be able to soak in through the pavers, the rainwater or whatever.
Oh, yeah. It wouldn't infiltrate to the point of recharging an aquifer, but it would soak through the pavers and then come out
Right,
to an
and
outflow.
ultimately end up in the lake.
Yeah,
Correct.
So this is Peter again. Just a couple other things. Maybe this is more for Paul. And again, in the Plaza area there, it says primary opportunity area for integrated public art, which is obviously a programmatic issue, not a capital issue. With that comment, Paul, do you know what's being considered, or it's just saying, well, yeah, we could do things there? I guess where I'm concerned about is kind of permanency of things. I think the one thing I like about it, by decluttering it, you kind of create maximum flexibility if you can move things in and out and around about it over time. You're on mute, Paul.
Thank you for that tee up, because Anna and I just met with the Arts Council on this project on Tuesday night, and got input on the handsome bollards as well as the opportunities for new public art. And they gave us some input. It was still early. It's the beginning of the conversation, but the art actually can be a capital issue, because it could be integrated into, for example, a kiosk or a bench, or some other functional piece. And so that was somewhat of the conversation was, what themes were they interested in us pursuing? what kind of functional integrated types there are. I mean, there's other options too. Anna had a whole presentation, some of it's stuff that could be embedded in the concrete paving or, attached to the wall of the boiler building. There's lots of choices. I think the one thing that stuck with me, and I can't say this was a universal, but several of the Arts Council commissioners were interested in a nautical theme. They liked that they had one person who had just been to Mohai and really enjoyed the nautical themes there. And her kids had particularly been jazzed. And thinking about this as an area that youth are going to be using, with camps and classes and so forth, that might be a theme to pursue. But there, Anna had a lot of other really great ideas, lake natural history, some of the more modern history, with the Calkins owning the place before it became a boys' school, and so there's lots of choices. We told Arts Council we'd be back with them next year. We can give them some options, and at that point that will be in 60% design, so we'll know more about what we could realistically integrate art with.
Just one thing to add on, I think the Arts Council also appreciated decluttering the space.
Yes.
So I think that there's a kind of an opportunity there to really keep it open and go with potential art that doesn't clutter.
Right.
And that openness of the space is unique and to be kept.
Actually, I'll just make a note that they actually, two Arts Council members asked if we could remove the benches in the passageway in front of the boiler building because they felt that was constricting.
Right.
So that's, I guess I'm just laying that out because the three of you are really kind of the decision-making point on that. It depends how far you want to go with decluttering.
This is Peter. I guess looking, I could see that. But because right now, just thinking in the kind of the semicircle area that kind of juts out a little bit there, wasn't there going to be some benches or something put in there or not?
Yeah, and one of the options that we showed early on when we were going through the alternatives, we had a couple of picnic tables in here, and maybe I think there might have been some benches around it, but in the idea of decluttering, we pulled those furnishings out and limited it just to the one over here and a couple of benches here, so people would have a place to just sit and enjoy the view.
Right.
Yeah, this is Rory. I'm not wedded to the idea of those two benches being where they are now, but I do think we need to provide some seating for people who come down and just want to, other than the steps, obviously,
Right.
that for people who want to come down and just enjoy the view or enjoy the activities of what's going on the docks. So, I'm not sure where we would put those, but if they're not in that location, then I think the plaza area with the round end would be a logical place to have something.
Yeah, and I think the other benefit of what Rory is suggesting is that, if I'm sitting on that bench kind of in front of the boiler building there, that's kind of the constricting point of this whole area in terms of kind of throughput. And to me, it's not if I just kind of want to ponder the water and so forth, and people are walking in front of me all the time, it's not a very as enjoyable experience as opposed to if it's in that circular area that juts out, where again, you're not going to be kind of in the flow of traffic. Now, will people be walking there to look out? Of course, but I think it would be a much better experience. So, okay. So any other kind of, I think we're gonna go kind of to the alternate stair or walkway area ramp thing in a minute. But any other questions on this slide in general or more specifically?
Well, do we need to talk more about the benches now, or can we just deal with that later?
Sure. Why don't you, yeah, since we're kind of on it, why don't you?
Yeah,
chime
I
in?
don't know. I mean, I remember we talked about this before, and I think the reason why we put them back over there was to like not get in the way of people who wanted to walk right up to the water, but I totally see both sides of it. I think we should definitely have benches because, you know, for some people, like just walking all the way down there, like that's a major trek for them, right?
Yeah,
And they
yeah.
want to sit and not on the stairs. So definitely some benches but I don't know. I see both sides of it. Do we give, you know, more importance to people sitting on benches right in that little semicircle by the water, or just the people who are walking over there?
Yeah, the one thing to keep in mind, you know, the nice thing about the benches on the wall here is yes, they're blocking the path, but they've got a more open view because they're looking past the bollards and there's not a wall. If you put them in this area, you know, it's a little constrained. It's not the same. You're not as close to the water. You might actually be closer to the water, but you're not as close to the water because you've got that wall around you. So, but your point about, yeah, this getting here could be a big deal, will be a big deal for some people. So providing a place to sit is important. To rest and just, you know, get ready to make the trek back out the other direction, because there's no short, easy route into this place. They're all steep. So
One other potential location for a bench, it's not on the plaza, but a bench potentially at the ADA beach access point at the terminus of that.
over here,
Yeah, but down at the beach, so that you could essentially walk down to the beach and then there could be a bench there. Something that I was thinking about.
thinking a bench like in this area.
I was thinking by the sheet pile cap. So you're actually at the beach. Would be another, it would require the pathway to be widened a bit to accommodate it, but that might be another place people would want to sit.
So maybe make that like a seat wall kind of thing on the back.
Yeah, you
instead of
could
a rockery.
potentially integrate it with the rockery. Or you could maybe make the rockery a bit higher to expand the space to accommodate it. I think there's some detailed design we could fit it in as another option. What I heard from the Arts Council when they were talking about the benches as clutter, it was both from a clutter, but it was also from a safety question. If a couple of folks on the Art Council were worried about the safety of the stairs and their kids falling into the water and getting caught. And they thought if benches were there, that people would sit there and it would become more constrained, and that might reduce the safety of the stair. I heard that a little bit too.
I would think that would also improve the safety because it gives parents a place to sit without having to get wet. I know when my kids were little, they would go in the water year round. There are certain months of the year I would not want to get wet. And so I would, you know, if I was using this park when my kids were little, you know, I would want to sit here and watch them kind of go down and dangle their feet. I mean, that's how I would have used the space, but you know, that's just one perspective.
Yeah, it's a balance for sure.
So. But this might be, you know, this would be lower. So to get to this bench, you'd come down around and you could use it if you had walked here. And if you'd come from this way, you're not going to see it until you get over here. So you might not know about it, but you know, a seat wall there might something we could consider if you want, I guess.
Is it possible to have the benches in both locations? Like just where we have them now, but also over that orange box, but then does that affect what Rory was talking about before? Would you still be able to turn around or back out your wheelchair if there's a bench there?
We would have to design it that you could turn around and back
Yeah.
up your wheelchair. We wouldn't want to design it that it wouldn't accommodate that, just from a code and usability piece of view. So that would be part of the puzzle. is
Yeah, and I think
fitting that in.
That's why, I was thinking you probably couldn't fit a bench and a rockery there. So instead of a rockery, you'd probably end up with a concrete seat wall. Is that right, Anna?
That's definitely something that would be easier to fit. Mhm.
Well, we also talked in that area about using some of the logs that are there now as seating, cut them out, create a flat surface. So,
Mhm.
but personally, I think we could fit one bench into the semicircular plaza without causing any impediment
And get this to the same
to other
size.
viewers, because you've got more width there to work with.
Mhm.
It looks like quite a bit more.
Yeah, it's closer.
And I had forgotten until Andy put up that picture how narrow that passage is.
Yeah, and in this view, it definitely, if you take away, whatever the depth of that bench is, it would get a little narrow. You don't feel it as much in the plan, but
Yeah.
looking at this perspective,
Right.
it's there. So,
Okay, well, I think there's some options there that should be considered in the next go around, or whenever the next time is. Any other final comments before we tackle the pathway and ramp and the alternate and so forth? Okay, why don't we go to that other slide then with the alternate path?
I think, Anna, you've got the alternate.
I do. Okay, can you see my screen? So it's essentially the exact same image you were just looking at. There's just some red here indicating an alternate. So if we zoom into this pathway, so this existing pathway hits the structural ramp at this location and comes down at a pretty tight switchback and then hits the plaza at grade. It's like I said before, it's on grade, it's concrete, and the grading is supported with rockery walls, which is this hatching here. So we tried our hardest to, reduce grading to fit that in, but there definitely is some pretty significant changes in this area to accommodate that ADA accessible route. So when Paul and I were talking last week or a couple weeks ago, we said, well, what if we, looked at regrading this roadway or this driveway, which is something that I had avoided doing to kind of reduce the footprint of proposed work. But if we were to look at this driveway as a part of the pedestrian pathway, that would reduce the amount of switchbacks in this area. It would require, so you can see here, there's just 2 switchbacks now, and then you cross the roadway in this location. In order to provide an ADA crossing on that roadway, you would need to regrade a fair amount of this so you could have a flat pathway across it. Right now, it's just at a 10% grade, which is pretty steep, straight on down to the plaza. So you would have to bench in a flat, 5-6 foot wide flat area into that driveway. And then after you cross the driveway, in order to connect to the proposed South Shoreline Trail, which is here, you would need to climb, you would need to kind of head south a bit and grade in a pathway here. Likely you would need to have a rockery on either side. And that would be a low gradient then pathway to connect into this pathway. And then you continue to go down here to the plaza. So the overall length of the alternate route is a little bit longer. And consequently, it has a little bit shallower grade. And it does then integrate in this shoreline pathway. If you take the one that's in gray, you can also, of course, connect to the shoreline pathways just through the plaza. So no matter what, you can't get around the kind of spatial constraint that you need to drop about 8 feet, 7 or 8 feet from this point down to the plaza. And that takes some distance to get folks down there on a gradual slope.
This is Rory, and with the additional connecting trail there to get to the new trail that's coming in from the swimming area, would that also be concrete?
There could be some considerations for that. We propose concrete in this area because the slopes exceed 5%. There's some slopes that are up to 8%, which is still an ADA allowable slope, but you have to have a handrail and you have to have landings. And because it's getting a little steeper, crushed gravel isn't that great. But because this new slope is a little bit more gradual, I think for sure this piece of it could be crushed gravel. And then this section of it, have to look at it a little bit more closely. I think that this leg is still similar to what the current proposal is. So it is steeper than 5%. I think though that if we were to go gravel, we'd want to go gravel everywhere. So at least on this side of the road. So it'd really come down to the dirty details of what those grades are and what surfacing we think makes the most sense. If that kind of answers your question.
This is Peter. Maybe I'll start out. So I'm trying to understand. So I'm at the upper classroom and I want to go down to the, obviously I need to go to the lower area, but so the question is do I take with the alternate, I kind of say, well, that's kind of a shortcut to get to the beach path, call it that, as opposed to the kind of the original where you'd kind of snake down to the plaza and then you'd have to scoot over to the beach path. Am I missing anything there as far as kind of usage? It's just essentially creating a shortcut to the beach path. Is there anything other advantages to that?
I'd like to speak to that.
Okay, thanks, Paul.
So in addition, so there's 3 advantages to this alternative that I see, and a disadvantage. One advantage is that it kind of reduces the massing of that concrete pathway that currently will basically pave that piece of hillside next to the restrooms. You'll have a little bit less massing there. You can have some landscaping between the legs of the ramp. Visually, it'll be, I think, a little bit lighter on the landscape. The second is that you consolidate your entry points to the plaza. In other words, right now you'll have an entry point at the bottom of the ramp, you have an entry point at the driveway, and then you have an entry point at the South Shoreline Trail. It's a lot of different places for people coming into the plaza versus, having more of the foot traffic just come in off the South Shoreline Trail. And then the third is that we have stormwater issues on that driveway. It's a 100-year-old driveway. It's been there, and over the years, people have just kept putting gravel on it. It's overfilled, and as a result, the gravel washes down that driveway during storms, and then we have to shovel the gravel off the plaza. This regrading, not only will it'll regrade it back to a reasonable grade, but it'll also create a dip in the grade, which will help us catch and handle that stormwater in a more productive way, so that it actually, goes somewhere that it can be handled rather than just come onto the plaza surface. So those are 3 advantages. The disadvantage, of course, is that it impacts an area outside of the current work area, and it impacts a piece of hillside next to the shoreline with that new trail section. There's no significant trees in there, but it's still, it's still surfacing on what is now a natural grade.
Thank you for that, Paul.
One extra potential benefit of the red alignment is that from a construction point of view, I think a contractor would find the red alignment more constructible. You're not pushing as close to the ADA thresholds, and you don't have as much layout constraints. I can see in the field with a contractor them getting annoyed, and annoyance typically translates to dollars, by fitting such a large amount of program in a tight area. So I think it's a little bit more constructible.
Questions or comments from the committee?
After, this is Lynn Gualtieri. Oh, I was just gonna say, after
Okay.
hearing those advantages, I think I would vote for the red path.
Yeah, I agree. Paul outlined some specific advantages as far as the way the facility lays on the landscape. What I was thinking about, just trying to work it out, was, I'm in a wheelchair up there in the classroom, and I need to use the restroom. And the red path is going to take you a long way to get back to the restroom, but it's got to be buildable, and it's got to sit well on the landscape. So it does seem to offer a number of advantages in that area.
I think one thing to point out is that red path is the accessible path. And so that would be, yeah, if you're in a wheelchair, that's how you got to go. If you're not in a wheelchair, once you get to the street, you can just come down. So it's really for most able-bodied users, it's really not that much different. But yeah,
Right.
You're right. For a wheelchair, it is a notably longer route to get to the facilities.
Right. And also in terms of an able-bodied person coming down, we could also consider maybe a shortcut with a similar kind of granite stair or a stair feature here, so that there's a shortcut, since probably people will do a shortcut regardless, and put that in, and then so people would come down here, down the shortcut, and then to the street or to the driveway, making it a lot less circuitous for a number of folks as an option.
Yeah, this is Peter. I also like the alternate a little bit better. I think, Paul made some very cogent arguments. And the first one about the reducing the massing, because again, these are just schematics, but it just seems like there's a lot there in terms of that kind of snaking trail. To the extent we can kind of reduce that, I think that's of value. So I appreciate that, Paul. Any other final comments on that? I don't see anybody. So, okay, next, Paul.
I think I think we've covered pretty much everything. And Anna or Andy, any other elements that we've missed?
We didn't talk much about the rooftop classroom, but I don't know that there's a lot to say about that.
Oh, that's right.
It's a rooftop classroom, and it has a structured path, structured ramp that comes down to the at-grade ramp. And
Can I just share my screen on that, and we can just that quick?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just had one question about the classroom, the way it was designed. So you're going to put a kind of a wood decking over that entire surface?
That's right. So
the roof?
yeah, so here's a plan view of that. It's a tile wooden composite material that would cover the surface in a grid. So they're square tiles of a wood composite.
And they would be elevated a few inches above the roof on the piles?
That's correct. So I'm gonna zoom in here on this detail. Can you see that detail?
Right.
So the tiles are supported on these short posts or columns And then the other detail is this steel railing with stainless steel on a 3-inch spacing. That's a pretty standard public railing that you probably see in a lot of commercial spaces. So that's the basic premise here. There's a few other minor details about how it attaches to the walkway, the ADA walkway, and there's a gutter off the back side of the building that's new. But basic idea is that it'll present as a wood deck with a steel railing with cable, between the railings.
Okay, and there would be the ramp that's coming up would be at grade with the wood surface. And
That's
there's no
correct.
step or anything there.
That's
I
correct.
see. Okay. Yeah, design-wise, I just would offer the comment. It looks really nice. It's simple, straightforward. It's functional. It's also going to be really expensive.
Yeah, this is Peter Struck. I think that the outdoor classroom, and I really call it kind of a viewing area as well when it's not being used as a classroom. I think it's going to be one of the signature pieces of this redesign or update.
Yeah, and just as a point of Paul's sharing his screen. I'm looking at the same deal on my screen, but I've got a picture of a very similar railing from a project we just did, and the railings are kind of cool, and they have very low visual impact, so they do make it a good place to just sit and enjoy. And is the intent that there would be any kind of permanent furnishings up there, or would any furnishings in the classroom be seasonal, Paul?
Yes, we discussed at concept design that we would just do all the furnishings operationally. So we might leave stuff out there during the summer, or we might not. We might have things just for when we have classes up there. It's going to be an operational decision what goes up there. We might put a picnic table up there. It's just up to, at this point, it's up to whoever's in charge.
So Andy, this is Peter Struck again.
Yeah.
When you mentioned the railing concept, I don't know if this is possible, but I was just thinking we have on our deck up on the island, one of the islands. I mean, it's kind of clear. I know I'll call it plexiglass / glass, and then it has the post. But it basically, as long as you keep it clean, there's really. It's unobstructed view, I guess is the best way to put it. Is that what you were talking about, or?
No, the one that I'm looking at is the same kind of wire. It's a cable railing, so you've got your cables are spaced close enough that
Oh, okay.
you can't pass a 4-inch ball.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I can share my screen real quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's
Yeah. Our neighbor next to us on up there has that cable railing, so I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so this is the cable railing at the terminal at Mucklety, and you can see it's that's pretty much the same as the detail that Cardinal drew up, and it has but you can see the cables, but they really don't get in the way of enjoying what's beyond them. So that's what we're looking at,
and just I mean in the picture there, this is Peter again. It's kind of the top railing is kind of cantilevered or slanted a little bit, so you can kind of lean on it a little bit easier than if it's just flat. Is that correct?
That's the way this one was designed. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a nice feature.
This is Rory. And just a question for Andy. Is that a less expensive alternative than clear panels or
It's a much lower maintenance
a
alternative.
much lower maintenance? Okay. Yeah,
I
for sure.
I can't speak to the capital costs. I haven't compared those, but from a maintenance perspective, the keeping, especially if it's a plexi and not a glass, keeping it clean is really hard. And for this, in this particular location, the outer side of the glass, accessing that to clean it is not going to be easy. I mean, it's not going to be hard. You need a step ladder, but it's just that much more maintenance to keep a clear panel clear. So I think that's one of the advantages.
I think it's also more susceptible to damage by public if it's scratched or anything with glass or plexi would be tricky from just a public potential damage.
No, this looks nice. No, it's a good alternative.
Yeah, I agree.
All right.
I want to do a time check. It's 11:30 and we have a couple of other items. These were the long items, so we're doing well. But I think maybe if everybody's able to, get their questions answered, we can move on to the permitting.
I think we're ready.
Okay. Do you want to talk about where we are with permitting?
Yeah. So we had our pre-app meeting with the various city departments, and in general, it looks like most of this is going to be permitted. The program is good. What we're wrestling with is that in the Shoreline code, there are there's something we missed, that they actually outright ban breakwaters. And we think we can get around that with semantics if we don't call our outer dock a breakwater. But given the type of vessel traffic that goes in the channel there, which namely the wakeboarding boats and the way things are now, people like to throw really big wakes so that they can surf on them or the wakeboarding, to be safe in that environment, because that activity is going on just offshore from the dock. The float needs to be heavier than it would normally be if it's just in a protected marina. So we're going to go, our intent is to move forward with a mooring float that's very heavy, and it'll still provide protection for the inner float, which is where the kayaks, the stand-up paddle boards, the small sailboats, all of that activity will be inboarded. It will be protected, and we're trying to figure out what can we do to maximize that protection without running afoul of the Shoreline Master Program language that says no breakwaters. And it's a safety issue is really what we're talking about. So we think we've got a pretty strong argument to make there, but we're going to be meeting with them some more to talk through the process and see what we can do without a variance to get as much benefit as possible and stick as close to the program as possible. Or if we want to build the program the way we want to build it, how much more work is it going to be to get a variance to do what we really need, what we think the program needs to be. So there's some work to be done there in terms of permitting the new floats, and it's really around that language. The safety features, we will be running a standpipe on the outer float, which is where the small boats will be moored. And so we'll have to provide a standpipe to that. And there needs to be a connection to the standpipe up near the existing fire hydrant, which is just north of the building. The hydrant seems like it was built before some improvements were made because it's half buried. But we can work with that. That's something we'll work with the fire marshal on that. And otherwise, it seems like, you know, that we are going to have some more discussions with the building department or the planning department, which manages the Shoreline Master Program. But as I mentioned, in terms of overwater coverage, we were really conservative in our calculation during the sketching phase of the project. Now that we actually have drawings, we're a little bit less. So we're better in that regard. And we're, the rest of it, you know, we know we've got to provide 40% open area on new floats. And the gangways will be open areas. So I think, you know, we do have a little bit of a challenge in front of us with some pieces of that, but we think we'll still be able to build most of what we want and still get a functional facility. The function might not just be at a higher level as we were planning. So that's my recap of the pre-app meeting that we had. You know, the other thing, we will need to provide a phone so people can call the fire department, and it has to be a hardwired landline. You can't just put up a sign and tell people what number to call on their cell phones. So there's a little bit more that's going to have to be out on that, out on the main float.
Paul, I have a quick question with, you know, following Andy's description. How did we get a variance for those floating wave attenuators that were put in at Groveland Beach off the dock?
I don't think so.
They weren't considered a breakwater?
Not that I know of, but that's an interesting question because they are, for all intents and purposes, a breakwater.
Yeah, I mean, we want to stay away from that as a solution. You know, we heard pretty loud and clear that from a number of people, particularly one commissioner, that aesthetically and functionally those get in the way of using docks for anything other than boating. But I was just curious because they're definitely they're serving that function.
Yeah, they don't serve any other function.
Right.
They may have been permitted prior to the Shoreline Master Program update. So
I
that's
see.
the only possible explanation that I can come up with right now, but I'll find out because it is an interesting question.
Well, it's not a solution for us, I don't think, in this project because we don't want to
No.
go that way. But
No.
if we need to seek a variance or something like that, there might be a precedent.
Anna, do you remember when, I mean, this is really a Josh question, but do you remember when Mercer Island last did their Shoreline Master Program update? Because the docks, the breakwaters at Groveland are pretty new.
Those are new. Yeah, I was seeing the same thing. I don't, but I can see if I can figure that out quickly.
I think, yeah, I don't know either. I think Shoreline Master Program was 2 or 3 years ago and Groveland was probably permitted in 2017.
Looks like 2015 was the final adoption.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So yeah, that would be a good one to follow up on.
Yeah, okay.
And I think Catherine Ketteridge, who's the coastal engineer on our project, was involved in that. So I can ask her if she has any recollection of needing a variance or any other permitting issues associated with that project as well.
All right, and the last agenda item is this next steps and next meeting. I think that we'll probably want to show the commissioners a revised plan set with maybe the new ramp configuration and some of the other changes to the details we discussed. Does that seem reasonable to do? And then we also probably want to be able to come back to the subcommittee and tell them where we are with the docks, you know, once we work out some of these permitting issues. So I imagine that's what, like 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks out to get those answers and maybe redo the plan set. What do you think, Andy and Anna?
That sounds reasonable to me.
Yeah.
But-
I think we've got I owe you some comments on the agenda for the meeting with the planning department, but that meeting's happening next week, right?
And so, yeah, it's a week from today.
Okay, yeah, so we should, if we can get some clarification from them, particularly if we can, if we can use Groveland not as a design precedent, but as a permitting precedent, that might be really helpful.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as a permitting precedent.
Right.
Because we sure don't want to replicate that design.
No, well, then that design doesn't work for us because we need something where you can more boats. So.
So 3 weeks from today would be October 7th. And Lynn, you're our star. We want to work around. So what's your week look like that week?
Well, I'm not saying you have to work around me, but I will be in Spain on October 7th.
Oh, jeez.
Do you have the internet there?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I don't think the wire goes over the ocean. Sorry.
Oh,
My Wi-Fi is not compatible with their Wi-Fi.
definitely won't work.
Well, what would work for you, Andy?
I get back on the 11th.
Oh, how about the week of the 11th?
Sure. I'll be drinking lots of coffee to get over the jet lag, but that'll work. It's
Or
that
maybe
week's
not the
pretty open.
11th.
Yeah, I get in the afternoon of the 11th. Morning of the, I don't know.
Morning of the 12th is clear on my calendar.
Yeah, poor Andy is asleep.
I-
Just the day to-
I'm already scheduled to facilitate a meeting at 8:30 in the morning on the 12th.
Oh, my
Oh.
Brutal.
Yeah, coffee and I are going to become really good friends for a week.
So Lynn, is the Wednesday the 13th or the Thursday the 14th? Any,
Thursday, the 14th is better for me in the morning.
yeah,
Yeah,
we have a full Parks Commission meeting at 5:30, but I know I'll speak for Roy. I think I'm happy to do double duty on the 14th if that, like at 10 again or something like that.
Yeah, the 14th is wide open for me, and the 13th, anytime outside of 10 to 12:30 is open.
So
yeah, those
How
days
about-
work for me too.
So Thursday, the 14th at 10 to, what do you, well, maybe just pencil in 10 to noon and hopefully it'll
Yeah.
be shorter.
yeah, hopefully it'll be shorter. Great.
All right.
Works for me.
We'll, all right. So, any final comments or thoughts before we move to adjourn? All right, hearing none. So this subcommittee's next meeting will be October 14th, 2021. I would like to thank all involved for serving on the subcommittee. The time is now 11:43 and the meeting is adjourned. However, as a reminder to participants, please stay seated until the city staff has terminated the Zoom broadcast. Have a great rest of your day and stay safe and healthy. Thank you.
Thank you.